we're going to go ahead and talk hinge cutting today. I tend not to talk a lot about hinge cutting, quite honestly, because it is the most dangerous logging act there is out in the woods, and because I've seen more in my consulting work, I've seen more timber ruined through hinge cutting than absolutely everything else added together. Remember, this is a tool. Every tool out there can be used inappropriately, and darn near every tool out there in very specific situations can be used effectively. Let's talk about how we can utilize hinge cutting effectively. First, what is hinge cutting? Hinge cutting is nothing more than the act of cutting a tree just far enough through so it'll tip over, but keep that connection to the root system. As long as it keeps that connection to the root system, that tree can hypothetically continue to grow because food and water continues to flow between the roots and the leaves. Where you get yourself in trouble is when you cut too far through that tree or they snap. A whole bunch of species of trees out there, aspen, white pine, they'll go ahead and they'll snap right off on you. And those are dangerous, dangerous trees to hinge cut. Rather than go in and hinge cutting a 40, what you want to do is you want to, as I said, use it as a scalpel. Instead of, go ahead, log the 40, sure, but then go ahead and around those food plots, edge feather it with some hinge cutting. Edge feathering is nothing more than hinge cutting a 5-yard band or so around that feature. It allows more sunlight in. It allows more growth to occur. And it goes ahead and gives the whitetails that feeling of safety and comfort. I'm surrounded by nice thick cover. One jump, I'm gone. Okay, that's a great place. But now when you're doing that, if you want the deer to be able to get through there, hinge cut higher. If you don't want them to be able to get through your edge feathering and instead just create trails for them to use, which can really work out real nice, alternate those cuts from high to low, make a little bit of a blockade. I talked earlier about how I've seen so much timber ruined. Where I see it over and over again is people go out and hinge cut this huge area and they're hinge cutting it all about this far off the ground. So now all these whitetails, they have to try to step over this stuff. They can't climb through it. It's a real pain. It makes awesome rabbit habitat. I mean awesome rabbit habitat, but not real good deer habitat at all, and you just ruined all that timber value. Okay. So another area where it works well is when you're trying to create a blockade, a dead zone like that. Okay, either a strip of a blockade or a dead zone for your odors to blow into. Another area is smaller doe bedding areas, maybe a half acre, acre at most, where you're creating artificial ceilings by dropping the largest trees first and then laying the smaller ones over top of it. But again, it needs to be off the ground so they can get through this stuff. Now, how do we make these hinge cuts actually survive? The way we make them survive is, first, when we're going to start with this stuff, remember, this is the most dangerous logging activity there is out there. We are going to follow every chainsaw safety rule, and if you are even remotely concerned, don't do it, please. Please don't. Your loved ones want you to come home tonight. Okay, you stay away from dead trees, all that stuff, and when you're first starting out, rather than going for trees stick to the smaller diameter trees, specifically low to no timber value trees, because that way if they don't work, who cares? Stick to the smaller low timber value trees, the ones that are too small to hurt you if they fall on you. Okay, and then cut just barely far enough through so you can pull that top down to the ground. By taking that approach, you end up with a heck of a lot more connective tissue left. The more connective tissue left between the canopy, which is now on ground level, instant cover and food, and the root system, the higher this tree survival rate. Also experiment with the various species. Some species will go ahead and hinge cut so beautifully, and others, such as the aspen and pine, they'll go ahead and snap and take your head off if you're dealing with big ones and not being safe. Okay. Really, really think about how you're going to utilize hinge cutting before you start going out and doing it. It is a tool. It works great in very specific, very targeted areas, but don't go out and hinge cut your entire woods, because otherwise, if you ever want to get any timber value out of it, because you're probably ruining it.
Final thoughts, brought to you by Huntworth.
Hinge cutting is a very useful tool, but that is what it is. It is a tool. You do not use a single tool for everything out there. If you do, you're disappointed. It's the same with hinge cutting. Logging is my primary means of transforming timber. Hinge cutting is my scalpel that I use for very fine-tuned work and a very limited level. To be brutally honest with you, it is pretty darn rare that I'm hinge cutting as much as 10% of a wood lot. Almost every time it's under 5%. But it is a good tool. If you use it appropriately, it will work for you.